Christmas break is upon us, and every year there's a number of boys with nowhere to go. You know, the kids from foreign countries and the ones with divorced parents and stuff like that. And this year there's a boy, he's a junior, and kind of a troublemaker, kind of troubled, damaged and troubled, but a smart kid underneath. And his mother calls him last minute to say she's widowed, has been widowed, she's just remarried, she has just remarried, and they want to use this Christmas vacation as their honeymoon. You understand, don't you, darling? Stanley's been working so hard. The teacher selected this year to stay behind with the boys is a very disliked, curmudgeonly ancient history teacher, p.g.a. Through a kind of deus ex machina script device, all the other boys find somewhere else to go at some point, and it's down to just this teacher, played by Paul Giamatti, and this boy, and the head cook at the school. Also, she's a single mom, and her son attended this very same school on a charity scholarship, but did not have the wherewithal to go to college and has just been killed in Vietnam. So this movie is about the adventures of these three kind of shipwrecked people during a very snowy 2 weeks in Massachusetts in 1970. I've been an admirer of school movies, you know, Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner and If and Peter Weir's movie, and I had seen a companion of those films, a somewhat under-known French film by a great director, but from 1935 or 36, called Merluce by Marcel Pagnol. And it had that same basic premise. I saw that 10 or 12 years ago and it never left me. I thought, you know, that's a pretty good premise for a film. But I personally didn't have the wherewithal to, I didn't have the life experience of a private school and so forth. I'm from Omaha. Nor did I have really the discipline to go research it. But a pilot came my way set in a prep school, and it was a very fine pilot. And I called up the writer and said, I thank you for sending me this wonderful script. I don't want to read it. Would you consider taking on an idea of mine? And so it was, David Hemingson. That's how David Hemingson, the fine screenwriter, came into my life. So typically I've written my own scripts, and certainly I was involved in rewriting this one and conceiving it, but David Hemingson really did an outstanding job writing it. That's what attracted me to it. It sounds hyperbolic, and I'm sure it is, but I just think Paul Giamatti is the greatest actor. There's nothing he can't do. From the moment I first met him, when he auditioned for Sideways for me, going on 20 years ago, I thought, this guy can make even bad dialogue work, and he can, no matter what the dialogue. I had him in Omaha for a public interview, and I said, you know, Paul Giamatti, you can really make bad dialogue work. I'll bet you could even read the phone book, like they say, read the phone book and make it compelling. And he laughed, and I leaned over and I pulled out the Omaha phone book and I handed it to him. I said, would you please just open up to a page? He started reading it and brought the house down. That's why I like Paul Giamatti. And he's just a lovely guy, brilliant guy, most well-read human I know, and a delight to work with. Well, the part was written for him. Ever since Sideways, I just thought, I can't wait to work with Paul Giamatti again. And nothing really came our way, nor did I find the right screenplay to tailor for him until this one. So David Hemingson, the writer, and I clearly had Paul in mind while we were tailoring this, making the screenplay. He had never been in front of a camera before. He was an actor and a star in the drama department, and everybody knew that. And I still had to audition him a few times to be sure and to make sure that his skills on stage could be reined in a way, or altered, modified, whatever the word is, to become a cinema actor, a film actor. But he took to it like a duck to water. And it's the real movie from this film, I think, would be a documentary about what's going to happen to Dominic Sessa after this movie comes out. Her character, Mary Lamb is the character's name, a grieving mother who's lost her son within this last year. So I have noted from previous films I've made that I like to get actors with good comic chops to play dramatic characters, because then the character won't easily descend into drear. Comic actors have a sense of rhythm and can kind of keep things aloft without cheapening the emotions, on the contrary. And so I had seen Divine Joy Randolph and enjoyed her immensely in Dolomite Is My Name, which, by the way, is a fine motion picture. And so she was among the actors I met for that part, either to have a meeting or to read for it, and I just kind of fell in love with her. I hope we achieved a convincing sense of period, 1970. I know what I did was I just pretended I was making a film then. I wasn't thinking, oh, I'm here. I mean, you can't avoid it, but as much as I could, I was actually tricking myself into being a director then.
Alexander read a pilot that I wrote about 4 years ago that was set in a prep school in 1980. And he kind of called me up out of the blue, and having read it, was like, I love this pilot. And I was like incredibly flattered because he's like a personal hero of mine. He's a brilliant director, so I was like blown away. And then he said, you know, but I don't really do TV, but I have this feature I want to do that's set in that world in 1970. I said, okay, sure. And I said, what is he? He said, well, basically, I really want to do this sort of optically challenged, kind of odoriferous professor that gets stuck at a prep school over Christmas break 1970 to 71 with a group of students, one of whom has sort of been stranded by his family, most definitely, and this relationship kind of evolves over the course of the movie. And so that was sort of the genesis of the whole thing. He's a brilliant, brilliant director. And I kind of feel like I went to film school on Alexander's back, and that, like, you know, he would make these references. He'd want something kind of tonally or visually, or he'd, you know, kind of want a narrative moment that, as opposed to try to unpack it verbally, he'd just be like, John Garfield, you know, all right. Michael Curtiz, point of no return, 1950, midpoint forward, click. Like, what? Hello? I'd be like, and I'd have to figure out, oh, okay, he wants sort of tonally this kind of thing, you know. He wants to be able to evoke certain moods. And I think for him, it's got to be the organic evolution of the characters over the course of the narrative. And so I think the reason he doesn't get specific in terms of distinct turns he wants is because he wants me to find it and then for him to reflect upon it. I mean, that's been our working relationship, and I hope to God it continues for many, many decades to come, because I would kill to work with him again. I think he's a brilliant guy. The story of the Holdovers is this. A optically challenged, kind of odoriferous professor, the least popular member of the faculty, right, gets stuck, actually he's being punished, gets stuck holding over at Barton Academy over Christmas because he failed a rather high-octane, high-profile student whose dad had just endowed the gym. And so as punishment and as penance, he is stuck holding over with the kids who can't go home. And they're kind of a motley crew of kids who can't return for various reasons, one of whom is Angus Tully, who gets held over at the last minute. This kid's amazing. I mean, you know, I've never seen an actor, I think he's only done, plays in high school. He's done a lot of stuff because he's a massively gifted kid. But I've never seen an actor who is more naturally available, you know, and in the moment and present. Like, you know, he's allowing us to see a lot of stuff that most people spend a lifetime hiding, you know. He's letting you see the vulnerability. He's letting you see some of the anger. He's letting you see some of the disconnects, you know. We're so blessed. I mean, Alexander can cast. I mean, top to bottom, the actors in this show are amazing. I love my Holdovers. I love all those kids. Those kids are all amazing, you know, and funny and genuine and real. I mean, I think reality is sort of one of the hallmarks of an Alexander Payne movie. You know, it just feels real. And it's heightened, and he takes you on a journey, and there's a fun narrative. I mean, you have a good time, and I think that's one of his imperatives. Like he wants people to be entertained, but he wants people to be entertained by the human comedy, by the reality of it, by by the landscape of people's souls. Like he wants you to take that journey, and that's kind of what we do in this movie, I think. It's so much fun to watch because they have their own sort of dry rhythm, and it kind of mirrors the thing that evolves on screen, which is the characters are these two people who are so, their lives are fraught for different reasons, and their histories are weighted with different problems and tragedies, and I think together they're able to share some of that pain and transcendent laugh about it. And it's remarkable to watch it evolve on screen, these two very different people who find common ground, but also give each other no quarter, which is the best part. They have this telepathic relationship that is sort of like, if sometimes there's explicit communication, but oftentimes it's almost monosyllabic because they know each other so well. They'll be like, cut, just more, a little of that, yeah. And you could maybe yes, and then not no, but more of the other thing, precisely. And it's sort of like, it's like that, And then you just kind of watch it and he adjusts, And Alexander occasionally will just sort of make a statement about kind of what's happening. This represents X, and you just see Paul's face cycle through like 4 or 5 different emotions. I feel like the one thing that is at the center, sort of the core theme of the movie, for me at least, is heroism, like quiet heroism, because the foundation of the relationship between Angus and Paul kind of goes back to my Uncle Earl and myself. And we used to call him Hero when I was growing up because he's a guy who would show up and do the thing, just be present, with me, and just sort of like give me this wisdom and give me this sort of tough love and give me this sort of like hard-bitten, world-weary genius that would just kind of fall out of him, that was like profane and lyrical and honest and like genuine and epic at the same time, And I feel like that's what I wanted to install in the Paul character, and I think I hope it comes out. I think it does. And I think Paul Giamatti does a brilliant job doing it. Just like, the heroism of Mary, I think is really consequential, in the sacrifice that she made and sort of the lurking anger that she must feel. I mean, the massive yawning injustice that has been perpetrated on her and her son, and still she finds the compassion to reach out to Angus when he needs her, I think this is an important story to tell now because in some respects all bets are off. I think that my generation grew up understanding, or at least believing, that there were certain mile markers that you had to hit, and if you hit those mile markers, your life would go a certain way, and that society would go a certain way, and that you could trust in democracy, and that you could trust in integrity, and you could trust in all these things, that these institutions would never fail, that they would never falter, that they would always be here for us, and that's been profoundly challenged, and things have been destabilized, And I feel like the idea that someone can step up and make a difference in a kid's life like Paul does for Angus, and basically, in some respects, burn down everything he ever thought, he would, everything he ever wanted, everything, his entire life is predicated on the idea that he's a Barton man, And he says in the film, he's like, Barton means everything to me. It's my life. And yet he sacrifices that life at Barton for this kid, just to give this kid a second shot, And it's that sort of altruism, that sort of integrity, that sort of maturity, that sort of courage to sacrifice that I think we need to talk about and we need to see, you know what I'm saying, right now. Here is a man who is willing to step up, and he's going to make mistakes, and he's profane, and he's an alcoholic, and he's got his problems, but he is going to basically outshine his contemporaries, outshine his colleagues, be, a teacher in the best and most profound possible sense of the word, at the end of the day. That's who he is. That's who he demonstrates himself to be. And the lesson that he gives is one that will last Angus a lifetime.
Mary is a longtime worker at the school, and she is the chef. She's in charge of food services at the school. And she, unfortunately, the year is 1970. We span 1970 and into the beginning of 1971. And she has just recently suffered a loss of her child. And this what makes this interesting for her as a person in this world. This is her first time being completely alone. It's wonderful working with Paul Giamatti. He has such character as a human being, but also with what he brings to the table. And he's so great because sometimes, when you work with actors, those who you really revere for being so talented can be very serious sometimes and stuffy. And what is so amazing, and I think speaks even more to his talent, is that he's able to snap in and out of the character. It's very seamless. But I love right before they say action, I'll peek a look and you'll see him just like morph and fall into place into his character. Dominic is quite special for having never done it before. I would say what's more impressive, even outside of his talent, which is quite natural and just very present and non-stereotypical. He's doing I don't know if I could have done it, to play this hurt, damaged teenager, right? And it not just be this one-dimensional screaming kid every 5 seconds. He's really found the nuances to all of it. But I would say what I'm the most impressed with is the human being that he is. He's so kind and gentle and very intelligent. And there's an old soul about him where it feels as if he's been here before. You can tell there's a real desire to learn this industry and how things work. And he's very quick. I remember in the very beginning when we were just doing table reads, and we still had at least 2, if not 3 weeks before filming, he was already off book. I was not off book. So I was very impressed. When we had our first directors meeting, I was just enjoying this man who I was speaking with and his in-depth aptitude of film and culture and the many different styles of film and genres. He just has a vast, vast knowledge without being intimidating. It's really been a wonderful experience. I would say as plumed as he is with awards and accolades, it is like a kid in the candy shop. He truly loves this, truly. And he's giddy, and sometimes in between takes, he'll be dancing and smiling or clapping his hands like, a little kid. And that's very humbling because this can be a very hard job. It's a marathon, if you want it to be. It's a marathon versus a sprint. And what invigorates me, what continues to motivate me, is that this is someone who's been doing it for as long as he has. And he still has that childlike passion. And I think those people who have that usually are the ones that we applaud and laud and want, want and aspire to be. And so I think that youthfulness and true passion and love for what he does is, I think, one of the main ingredients as to why his projects are so wonderful. He has a really beautiful spirit and loves this. And it's clear that this is part of what his purpose here is on earth to do in the telling of stories. So it's really wonderful to be around that and hopefully taking that energy and taking that on to my next project, and that, crew members having experienced this will then go on to their next projects, right? And knowing that there's a certain way in which you can tell stories and handle yourself in the professional setting. And it doesn't have to be done with tension and stress and angst. And I think sometimes there's the misnomenclature that that's the only way to make great art, like under the pressure cooker. And I'm experiencing something completely different. So it's really wonderful. We're just seeing 2, 3 individuals, which I wonder if they weren't under these circumstances, if they would have had the opportunity to really get to know one another and to be an unpredicted vessel of support for one another. And I think what's beautiful about that is in this movie, in a way, it transcends ageism, racism, gender, and that these three individuals, due to the loss and pain that they have, it's like sometimes when you've hit rock bottom, you're open to anything, to seek relief wherever you can. Something that I love about Mary is that she gives the salt with the sugar, you know what I mean? The medicine with the sugar with them. And it's funny and enjoyable to see their different dynamics. And it is sometimes this very bizarre mom, dad, and kid. And there's sometimes when the youngest, the kid, is like more of a parent and giving us guidance or come to our aid when the other adult can't or doesn't know how to. It's a glimpse or an observation of what it's like if you just allow yourself to truly see someone and be open to receiving what another individual has to offer, as well as what you can also give.
I went in for my first audition, and it was, I was pretty relaxed because I wasn't expecting much out of it. And they called me back later that day, and I did some more reading, and eventually Alexander came to my school to come meet me and audition with him. And yeah, for the next 2 months, it was a lot of just touch and go, email, Zoom calls, and all that stuff. And by the time I had my last audition, I didn't know it was my last audition. I thought it was going to be, do that 2 weeks later for the next one. But we sat there, and it was me, Paul, and Alexander on a Zoom call, and we just read the whole script through. And Paul would read the parts that, in a scene where I was in, but he wasn't in. I would read parts for him in other scenes, and by the end, it was, I got the role that day. So yeah, it was really surreal and exciting, and didn't really know what to think or what to expect, but it was nice. The biggest challenge for me working on a film for the first time would be the turnaround on notes personally, because I've done a lot of live theater before. It's all I've done before is the shows at my school. And we have after school like 2-3 hour rehearsals, and you receive your notes at the end, and you can kind of, you have your journal, and you can go back to your room and internalize them and think about them for the next rehearsal or the show, or whatever's coming. But in this, it's really a matter of coming in, knowing your lines, and not really knowing, maybe having an idea of how the scene may pan out, but not having the clarity that you might have in a theater setting. So yeah, I mean, that's the hardest part for me, really doing this the first time, is doing something, receiving a note, and then, okay, rolling, go, So yeah, for me, but I think it's, I think I've adjusted pretty well to it, and obviously I have a lot of people around me who have been helping me prepare for that sort of thing. Being in a film with Alexander and, working on one of his movies, it's incredible working with him personally, having the director who's, sitting right there at the camera and sitting right next to you and comes up to you after every take and is in your ear. You can feel his presence, and it's comforting in that sense. But I think, I don't know, outside of that, he just attracts a lot of professionalism to his movies and his work. I think just him being a part of it, everyone around him sort of is, extra professional and is extra hard at work, and is really on top of it, and more so excited about working on it because of the type of person he is. My character, Angus Tully, say definitely a very damaged kid. He's been through a lot, yeah. It's being at a boarding school, I can understand how heartbreaking that would be to be ready for break and then have your own parents tell you that you can't come home for Christmas. And yeah, and I feel like for him, he's got a lot of these things in the past that have happened to him, and these experiences, obviously, with his father and his mother and his mother's boyfriend. And, it's not explicitly said what goes on, but you can sort of understand that there's a broken family dynamic there that's going on behind the scenes for him. And yeah, I think that really comes out with, his character and his daringness to say some of the things he says and to, pull off some of the things he tries to pull off. But at the same time, charming and innocent. And it's, one of those people you love to hate because you love them, It's incredible. It's like working with Paul it's a master class, But again, in the same way that Alexander has really, given me a lot of freedom in my creative process, the questions I ask him are less of, how do you act this, and more so, how do you deal with this? So it's less, my questions come, I think, after the scene, more so than they do before the scene. Dealing with those things like, what do you do when it's, 5 hours later after you shot a scene and it's like, oh, I could have done it this way, I could have done it that way. And there's no particular set of advice that he's giving me, but just getting an insight to how he deals with those things. And he's been there at that point. And, him just sort of describing, how he's changed and developed from those moments, and how it's actually a useful tool to kind of look back at things and, grow as an actor from looking back at things and not being satisfied with what you did in the past. Brief summary of the Holdovers would be that essentially opens with this teacher, Paul Hunnam, who is, as it states in the script, universally disliked by students and faculty. And he's been given the responsibility to watch these holdovers over break, who are the kids that don't have anywhere to go over Christmas break and have to stay at school. And unfortunately, my character, Angus Tully, finds himself as one of the holdovers. Mom blows him off for Christmas break. And all of these kids end up hooking up with Smith's dad, and they all go on a skiing trip. And Angus's parents are unreachable, can't get a signed permission slip to go on the trip. So now he's stuck with Mr. Hunnam and the cook Mary. And it's just from that point on, it kind of just becomes a learning story. These three people who come from very different worlds, very different experiences, create a special bond, a familial bond, and it brings them together in ways that I don't think anyone really would expect on a surface level, just looking at these people. To find, she just makes me laugh every day. Like on set, it's the loudest voice on set, the craziest voice on set. When you hear someone like screaming profanity across the room, it's coming from Divine's mouth, and you can't help but just, she just brings a really special energy, I think, to, my acting in particular. I think being in a scene with her, she's very, chill, doesn't carry herself very seriously. And, it helps me because she has all this crazy freedom that she likes to portray, and, the way she tries things, adding sentences, just random sentences, saying things in crazy ways just because. And as a young actor who's not done this a lot, it definitely gives me a lot of confidence to, go out there and just throw everything out there that I possibly can. And that's definitely something she does every day that I work with her.
I think it was very much a story about family. It's a very clever script. It's deceptive. It's deceptive in that it's about much more than you would think at first. And it's also extremely funny. And for me, as a longtime Alexander Payne fan, I think it is arguably his most emotional movie. To take what he does and with his characters, sort of the uniqueness of his characters, and to put them in this situation, it was an undeniable script. Paul Hunnam, played by Paul Giamatti, is a professor at this private boys' school in New England in 1970. He's been there forever, seemingly, and the students talk about him as having been there forever. Most of them don't know that he was actually at one point a student there himself. He is one of those professors you don't know a lot about. He sort of scares you, and he's a very, very smart man who should be a great teacher, and he's not. And I think in the process of this movie probably makes himself a better teacher. Paul Giamatti is one of those wonderful actors who's really a chameleon, and he can play any number of people. So we've seen him in a bunch of movies and television shows, but I don't know that I've ever seen Paul Giamatti play the same character twice. And so he somehow, he is somebody who can both put you off and yet bring you in at the same time. Dominic Sessa, who plays Angus, this is his first movie. He had been a drama student or been in school, in boys' school, but didn't have an agent, didn't have a manager. We had this wonderful casting director, Susan Shopmaker, who decided to go out and find, a discovery. And one of the smart places she went was to private boys' school's drama department and say, all right, who do you have? Who do you offer up? And that's how Dominic came in. He didn't come in through any orthodox means. It was really from out of nowhere. And I don't know what the number is. She probably saw 600-700 boys for this part. And Dominic, early on, we said, well, wait a minute, this is somebody to pay attention to. And Alexander put him through the paces. He had him sort of try out and test a number of times. And finally, he tested with Paul Giamatti. And I think Alexander, Paul, all the rest of us said, no, this is the guy. I think Dominic's a good choice to play this part because he has no tricks. He's a very honest actor. He's playing it as honestly as he can, and consequently, he's completely believable. I never, in looking at the finished film, and quite frankly, in all the dailies, I don't see any false moments. I don't see him at some point pretending to be something. He always seems to be that. Divine Joy Randolph is an actress who's been around for a while. That makes it sound like she's been doing this for years. She's just somebody who is doing features and television right now at quite a clip. And the interesting thing is she normally plays a comedic character, and not that she's very funny in the Holdovers, but I wouldn't describe her character as Mary Lamb as somebody who's comedic. She's actually has quite amount of sorrow in her, and is a mother who's gone through a real tragedy. We knew she had the acting chops, not just because she'd gone to the Yale School of Drama, but she had, as soon as we tested her, it was clear that she knew how to play this character. And it was great to watch her because as an actress, she discovered who Mary Lamb was. She started at one place and built the character, and you could see her do it. And she ended up with an accent that was quite original to Divine, but also quite true to where her character came from. I just stand back off to the side of the set and watch a really gifted actor, a really gifted director with these inspired actors discover something, and you just say, oh, I'm somehow a part of this, and just enjoy it. It was a really fun shoot. I've been through a lot of shoots that have been difficult, and sometimes for reasons you're doing a straight drama and it's not a lot of fun. This was a very breezy shoot. A number of crew members who are sort of hardened crew members out of Massachusetts said this was the most fun they've had making a movie in I don't know how long. I'm hoping that audiences take away from this film what I take away from it, which is a wonderful story, 3 characters who you are completely drawn to and feel significantly for and care about what their futures are. And also, quite frankly, it's just really fun. And what we've done is Alexander has made a 70s movie. How it's presented, how it's shot. From the opening credits, you'll know that this is not a movie that was made for 2022. It was very much. We're hoping you look at it and you say this is a 1970s movie that was made in 1970. I think The Holdovers is about a number of things, as the best movies are, but for me, ultimately, it's about family, and it's about how we make our family, not necessarily the family we were born into. And it's 3 characters who are in search in many ways of a family. One who has tragically lost her family, another who has been coldly rejected by his family, and another one who's, for whatever reasons, has never been able to put a family together. And somehow this Christmas, they get together and they form this ragtag family. And if I think about it philosophically, the movies that I've produced, if there's a unifying theme, it's very much about family.